Hey guys, if you want to listen to this episode ad-free, you can head over to our Patreon where you can enjoy that plus our exclusive news show, Double Take, where me and George break down the latest weekly film news. You can also have priority access to have your email read out on the show and also be a producer. So if that's interesting to you, head over to our Patreon, which is linked below.
Another year, definitely getting older, and I've noticed it's inevitable, really, James, that we just become more adult. And that I have said a couple of things recently that I hear it as I say it. I think, oh Christ, I'm getting older.
What to say?
Well, I was driving recently with Anna, and we drove under a railway bridge.
Yeah.
And I thought the road became quite narrow.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, I don't think there's enough room for two cars to pass it should another car come in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So out loud, I just said to Anna, that should have been a giveaway point. And I heard it. And I thought, that's incredibly dull.
Very dad.
Very dad.
Yeah.
And I went to the gym the other day. And the guy at the gym was like, what'd you do this weekend? And I was like, oh, I made a sofa bed. Set up a sofa bed.
Yeah.
And then again, I heard it. And I thought, oh, no. And it was sort of like, you know, at the end of 2001 where he sees the old man sat in the chair and the old man is actually looking back and seeing his younger self. I thought, is that me? Is that my life?
You've got domestic obligations, George. You're unpacking, you're moving in, you're nesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're
I've moved
homing.
flat recently and that's what moving in
It
is.
does become that.
But that is a joyful thing to do.
Yeah.
Do you know,
make your space your own.
apparently doing activities like building a sofa bed
Yeah.
and tidying up and just nesting and all that kind of stuff. It's very good for your dopamine levels. Naturally.
Oh, yeah,
Just
Sunday
to complete
reset.
small tasks is very nice. Cooking, for example, is a great one. Hoovering and
Watching people clean things is really pleasurable.
watching people clean things.
Yes, like
but not
videos
doing it
of
yourself.
like people doing like
Oh,
they
yeah.
show you their messy room and they like do their sofa, spray the thing, do the dust, put their coffee tables just so.
Yeah, but I'm always like, before this person cleaned, they put up a tripod. That's why I can't
And reframed it every time. It takes twice as long to
Yeah.
do. You know what was growing up, George, yesterday? We had to have a whole, basically almost a whole half
yeah,
day.
we did.
Just doing finance stuff. Everyone talks about the glam rush of podcasting, the views, the free gifted, this and that, the premieres. Sometimes you just got to sit down and do a bunch of boring, horrible admin. You've got to be on hold with people. You've got to move bank accounts.
Yeah.
You've got to crunch numbers
There's
and
actually
look at
stuff
costs.
we didn't do as well.
And we couldn't even get through it
do
because you
all.
get this thing where like you sent the request, but they now need to review it and come back.
Running a business is a full-time operation.
and
You're joining us right now, listeners and viewers, in the sort of glamorous bridge of the ship. But really,
Yes.
the guys
James and I
throwing
often
the
have
coal
in the bottom.
We
We
often
have
have
to
to go
do
down
a
to the
shift.
steam room
Yeah.
and go down there and
Yeah.
do that. And sometimes, you know, the mess or the cess pit is blocked up on the ship.
Sure,
and
in
we have
the
to get in
evenings, the
there.
captain can dine at the Commodore Club with a whiskey and look over at the horizon and say, looks
Yeah.
like calm seas for the night,
Yes.
full steam. But really, at 3 a.m.,
We're
he's
down.
up, down in the machines with the things.
Getting the barnacles
wheels,
off the ship as
sideways
well.
wheels, the upways wheels. Yeah, it all has to happen.
It all has to happen.
Like swans, George, we appear to be gliding along the water, but underneath, paddling.
Oh,
Do you like that
yes,
metaphor?
I do.
You never heard it before? Like swans on water.
Kind of.
Duck, maybe.
Still
people might
waters
use.
run deep and all that kind of stuff. And,
Yes.
And iceberging is also the thing I call because of, you know, tip of the iceberg. Oh, it looks great, but underneath there's a fucking huge iceberg.
Other Titanic references.
It's like I watched it recently. So much so that you can also check out.
You can check out
George's thought. George, I didn't refer to myself in the third person there. You can refer to George's.
I just Doctor Stranged you like through your own body.
I watched Titanic for the first time, and you will have. It's on the feed. You can check that out. What my thoughts are on that movie.
So last week, George, without you, I went to the BAFTA Rising Star Awards, where, like the last couple of
Nominations.
years, not nominees, sorry, like the last couple of events, it's at the Savoy. I did have a little piece of salmon and caviar, which was quite nice, a little creme fraiche and a little...
They always put on a good spread for us.
Yeah.
We've been to this now a couple of times, haven't we? And it's nice.
It's not like a glamorous thing. It starts at like 9:30, 10 in the morning, and there's like a Savoy conference room with a huge not life size. No, BAFTAs are smaller than that. It's a blown up.
That's
BAFTA.
what BAFTAs are like in the wild.
Yeah, so the celebrities are just huge.
Yeah.
There's like a huge BAFTA there, like a polycarbonate one, and you can just sort of network and meet different people. Saw friends of the show like Henry Calvert and Tobias Turley and others, and Ali Plum hosts it, and it's sort of a slightly little bit tepid, but like a nice event nonetheless. And there's photo opportunities, and they reveal who the Rising Star nominees are. In no particular order, you've got Marissa Abuela, who you'll know from the Amy Winehouse film Back to Black. You've got Jarrell Jerome, who I don't think I've seen in Not, but he is the lead in biopic Unstoppable.
He was in Moonlight as well, wasn't he?
And in Moonlight. David Johnson, who we're both big fans
Love him.
of, who was recently in Alien Romulus and also in Rye Lane. Mikey Madison, who was in Sean Baker's Anora and Scream 5, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Naban Rizwan, who is his screen debut thriller series Informer. Is that out yet? And then he's
Informer came out a while back.
A while ago, that was the one,
he's in this,
In Camera.
Yeah, which is meant to be really interesting. I know he's been in a couple of things, but want to check that out. It's the EE Rising Star Award is the only BAFTA award that is voted for by the general public.
And you guys can go and vote right
You
now.
can go and vote for them right now. And the winner will be announced at the BAFTA ceremony, which is in February.
So we only had the Brits turn up. The Americans, so Jarrell Jerome and Mikey Madison did us lovely little messages to mixed results, I will say. Sometimes, obviously, how something is filmed in different parts of the world. And I don't think you always know with these things how you're going to be watched necessarily. No. But yeah, it's always interesting to have people filmed in questionable ways. Mikey Madison in particular, who is obviously, we had the chance to speak to her, who was lovely. She was filmed right up against a wall by someone who must have been my height, because it was looking down on her, and maybe she was reading an auto cue. But nice affair, spoke to some lovely people, got some quite juicy gossip about films coming up soon. And I won't say who my source was because I don't think they'll want to be named, but I got some goss about the new Captain America Brave New World film, about how it is grossly over budget. That's a little financial pun there. Grossly over budget. They were saying it's 450 million before marketing.
That's crazy.
And that's a big Marvel film that will spend north of 100 million on marketing.
But that's not Avengers. It's just Captain America.
This is Captain America 4, and there's also this factor of it is Captain America, but it's not the star. It's Anthony Mackie, who is great.
Yeah, but
with a red hot. Apparently, I also heard that remind me the actor's name.
Giancarlo
Esposito's character was not in the original script. Yeah. That was after I think had multiple reshoots, and that was added in. And all of these things, unfortunately, tend to not usually do well for films. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Do you know what's interesting? I'm not saying I knew this film was in trouble, but I knew they were really kind of playing a different strategy with it, because I felt every single week on social media there would be another article about the Red Hulk, about this is a new thing about the Red Hulk. Oh, Harrison Ford this,
something new.
It's they're constantly trying to keep it in the news cycle and keep it talked about so people know, because it's been a while since the Marvel movies come out.
Yes,
and all I see is a quite cynical PR.
That's the other risk factor of this, is that they sort of rested last year and they need to come back with a hit this year. It needs to work. You can't take a year out and not make money and only make a little bit of money, and then you've got that factor of okay, well, we spent nearly $500 million already. Is there a sunken cost syndrome where we just have to double down and go for it, or do we cut our losses?
When we did our looking ahead to the films of this year a couple of weeks ago,
check that out.
We talked about the how Marvel has come back with this, and it's already by the way, they're doing sort of discussion topics around the Thunderbolts. Just Sebastian Stan's it's like the Breakfast Club of Marvel. I'm like, okay, as I think we talked about, for me, the one I'm only interested in is Fantastic Four, to see how they do that. New slate, that's how they should be really coming back. New characters.
I think that will do really well because it feels new and refreshing. And the aesthetic from what we've seen from the cartoon poster feels new and refreshing.
Do you think that these two Marvel films, Thunderbolts and Captain America: Brave New World, are a bit like when DC had announced that James Gunn was going to wipe the slate clean, but we still had The Flash and Aquaman 2 and all that stuff to come out, and it was okay, well, they're coming out and we'll pay attention, but I feel like
spent the money on them.
The reset will actually come with Fantastic Four.
I like your idea, but no. But it feels no, as in but the idea about it sort of being an idea from a time when Marvel was doing better. Do you know what I mean? The strategy of having there might have been more. They might have thought there was more of an appetite for a leftover Thunderbolts film before they had their bad year. But at that point, the wheels were already set in motion and were rolling down the hill. But when you look at the films, you're okay, so Captain America 4, Thunderbolts, and Fantastic Four. Only one of those really seems like really good fun.
Yeah,
Thunderbolts to me looks very sort of secondary. Extra, spare,
spare.
Both in its nature,
literally
and
taking the leftover scraps and cobbling together.
But does that ever really work? Who is ever that excited for that kind of film? it's like contractual obligation collect. It's like, how do we kill all these contractual obligations with
in
one
one
stone?
bit, yeah.
Put them together in a film. Do they have chemistry together? Probably not.
Anyway,
So a bit
welcome
of
to
news analysis. For Pulp
And
Kitchen,
just a
mate.
reminder that if you want
If you
more
like
news,
more of that,
subscribe to Patreon and you'll be able to get access to our exclusive show, Double Take.
This week we talked about the unfortunate situation that's, as a recording, still going on in LA with the fires and how we think that is probably going to affect LA, Hollywood, the film industry, how that affects jobs, and just more specifically focused on film. We talked a little bit about Fede Alvarez going back in and just changing the CGI on some characters in that film.
Talking about how Cillian Murphy is not in 28 years later, apparently.
Bit of a Mandela effect as to whether or not that's happening.
But you can catch
Euphoria
all that
season
there.
3 is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can get all of our thoughts on the Patreon. Thank you for everyone who's been signing up to the Patreon, actually. We've got lots of great little notifications of people joining us, which is fantastic.
And this is episode, I believe, 163. Last week, we reviewed Maria, Nickel Boys, and The Order. And this week, James, you've been to see
BABYGIRL.
Yes, a hot new piece of film that I haven't had a chance to see. I'm seeing it this week, but I'm really excited to hear your thoughts.
I cannot tell you how close I was to seeing that with my mum and my grandma.
And you're glad you didn't.
I'm so glad I didn't. We'll get into it in the review, but just go and see it with like your partner and non-sexual friends. As soon as the film started, because like, my mum was like, "What are you doing today?" I was like, "Oh, I need to go and catch BABYGIRL before next week." She's like, "Oh, what's that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's this film with Nicole Kidman." Nicole Kidman sounds great. And we never got back in touch to sync up. But I was in the back of my head, I think, kind of glad I never forced it. And then I came home and I was like, "Mum, I'm so glad we didn't see this together. I don't think you should see it with grandma. Like, you just go with a friend." But we'll be talking about that later.
Also, following a email recommendation last week and some comments on this show, I've gone and watched My Old Ass, the film with Aubrey Plaza, which came out about a month or so ago. It's now on Prime here in the
really
UK.
want to catch it, yeah.
I've caught that, and I'll be giving my thoughts on that. And then, as ever, emails and a game, and also to mention that Georgie the dog is in the room with
chewing
us
down
at the moment,
below, if you can hear
masticating underneath the table.
She feels
She's
safe
great.
under the desk, just sort of. Is she brushing against your legs as well? Just,
She's very nice. For those you can't see Georgie, she's very graceful. I'd say to James, if she could talk, I think she would have Princess Diana's voice.
Yes, very
Oh
sensitive.
goodness, I'm just going to wander over here now and just play with the bed.
She'll be very naughty, but cannot be disciplined.
Oh, just
If
like
you-
Diana.
Yeah, if you try to be like, "Georgie, no," she'll go, "You have wronged me. in
Yeah.
the way you've spoken to me.
She'll be hurt.
You
She'll take
abused me.
offence.
Yeah, you always get like this."
Yeah,
There she is. And
She
does
knows
have-
we're talking about her. There
Check out
she is.
George's shot for
For a snout. For a snout of
little
Georgie.
nose.
Oh, also, A Real Pain with Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran
Yes.
Culkin is out in cinemas now. We reviewed it a few months ago during the London Film Festival. Check our review on the feed for that. But in this episode, we'll also include a short interview with Jesse and Kieran. So listen to that if you've seen the film. And if you have seen the film, send in your thoughts about it. Also, James, I'm a bit late to it, but I have finally gone and seen the global phenomenon that is Wicked. I finally caught up with it. If you'd like to hear my thoughts on Wicked, check the feed later in the week. We'll be dropping a short little snippet about what I thought about that. Just a little thing later in the week. But until then,
times.
let's get on with the show. So yes, as mentioned, let's talk about My Old Ass, which is always going to be a funny sentence to say. Again, I really thank the listeners and the sirens for putting this on my radar. I putting my ass on my radar. I was aware of it, and I'm glad I finally went to see it. So this is a film directed by Megan Park, set in gorgeous Canada, by the way. Look, absolutely extensive, beautiful shots of woodland and waterways and golden hour sunlight, shining through. My Old Ass follows Elliot, played by Maisie Stella, and her two friends, and it's her 18th birthday, and we see her at the beginning of the film with her two friends heading out into the woods to take some illegal drugs and do some camping and play with the fire, even though she doesn't realise her family are actually waiting for her at home to throw a surprise, and there's a sort of cake melting a little bit as they wait. Because she's 18 and she's going to college in a few weeks' time, and she's really excited, and she wants to hang out with her friends and take some drugs. So she does, and in the sort of shroom-infused druggery, one ends up dancing, one friend ends up talking to rabbits.
Druggery.
But she takes these drugs and she thinks, I'm not having, there's no effect happening here. However, before she knows it, Aubrey Plaza is sat next to her at the campfire. And she's like, who are you? What the hell's going on? And they soon discover that Aubrey Plaza is the future version of Elliot. She is the 39-year-old version of 18-year-old Elliot.
Fantastic.
And she says, I don't know how this has happened. You appear to have summoned me in some sort of dream drug-like state, but here I am talking to you. And they have this evening together talking about their lives and their different perspectives and the sort of disbelief and the clash of wisdom gained through experience and idealism given by youth. And they have this encounter at the beginning of the film. And they are subsequently able, through some sort of hole in the space-time continuum that isn't really explored, but doesn't need to be explored because it's not that kind of film, they are still able to stay in contact with each other over the phone. And they have this night together, and obviously there are many things that future Elliot says, like, you should really spend more time with the family. She's like, yeah, I can't wait to go to college. She's like, oh, yeah, but have you spoken to mum recently? Like, have you spent time with your brothers? Oh, and by the way, if you see anyone called Chad, just avoid. Hard avoid. She's like, okay, fine.
Chad already is a name.
Yes, exactly. And so begins this film in which, yes, she starts to maybe take on the advice. Maybe she will start to spend a bit more time with her family. But a few scenes later, she's swimming in a lake. And who else appears to swim at this lake? A complete stranger who reveals himself to be, hi, I'm Chad. I'm working at the farm this summer because she's growing up on this cranberry farm in Canada. What I find interesting about My Old Ass, which is, by the way, a lovely, tight 89 minutes.
Oh, yes.
A solid
Just
89.
tucked in
Absolutely.
under 90 there.
Tacked right in my old ass.
Yeah.
Is that I think in describing the premise like that, it sounds like a fairly warm, fun, kind of broad comedy. Maybe something like 13 Going on 30, something a bit like Big in that kind of vein. And definitely has its foundations in there. But actually, what it becomes is really sincere, really heartfelt, and really touching almost from the get-go. So scenes after we've met the future Elliot, of seeing 18-year-old Elliot speaking with her mother, and it's just given this added layer of poignancy, and it just works really, really well. And I was the emotional intelligence and kind of wisdom of the film is present, and it's but done very lightly and deftly for a tight 90-minute movie. As I said, it looks gorgeous. It's got this kind of, it's a coming-of-age movie, and it has that kind of last summer before college sense, but it completely brings new life to the genre and to those tropes. And Maisie Stella is excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, really, Maisie Stella is a really brilliant screen presence. I'm going to say this right now. Aubrey Plaza, not really in the film. I'm going to say she's probably
really?
in,
Okay.
I would say, 2 to 3 scenes. Her presence is in the film a lot because that's kind of the concept, and she plays an important role. But there were, halfway through the film, I was thinking, I've not seen Aubrey Plaza in this film now. It's basically a cast of people actors I'm unfamiliar with. And I'm absolutely fine with that because Maisie Stella is doing such a good job at the heart of it.
I love it when that happens,
Oh,
actually.
it's-
you see a great film with a bunch of people you've never seen before.
Yeah.
Like when I said Nickel Boys yesterday, like most of that cast was unknown to me, and I'm like, it's perfect.
And also, it's so... it really grounds you. It's less distracting.
Everything
than
else
loads
falls
of,
away.
Everything
Yeah.
else falls away. And I felt totally immersed in this Canadian countryside and this sort of bucolic idea and of the scenery and the college coming, and maybe her opinion about life is kind of changing. But like I said, it's a tight 90 minutes, so it never overstays its welcome. I think it delivers its third act really well and sort of lands a conclusion that's kind of heartfelt, quite touching, kind of emotional beat. I know one of the sirens commented and said, oh, I love that film. Every time I think about it, I get a little lump in my throat, and I kind of get it. I think it's like, I was like, well done. That's a really nice, astute, thumbs up little movie there, and I look forward to seeing what Maisie Stella does next. I look forward to seeing what Megan Park does next.
It's quite an easy film to recommend. It's that ultimate fantasy of like, if you could go back to your younger self and tell them stuff, would that change the things that made you who you are in the first place? You need to go, you obviously wouldn't want to spoil things for yourself, but they need to live those moments to be who they are.
And there's this balance of, like how much of the mistakes you make are necessary to make you the person you are.
Yeah.
And also, like, Elliot as an 18-year-old character could be so annoying, but she's not. She's really charming, but also flawed, but interesting and lovely. A lovely, charming movie. If you haven't seen My Old Ass,
Go and check it out.
and it's called My Old Ass because that is what she refers to Aubrey Plaza as.
Nice,
And
yeah.
she's like, oh, you're like my old ass. She says, can I touch my old ass? I want to see what it feels like. And she's like, no, don't touch me. That's really weird. Anyway, go check it out.
I always thought I would like to go through like a little wormhole, go to see James from 12, 13 years old. I get to tell him everything. I get to see young James react, but then I get to wipe James's mind, and then I get to go back. And it'd be purely selfish for me because young James doesn't get to do anything else, but I get to sort of reassure a younger version of me about stuff.
If you could go back to your 13-year-old self, and they could remember, but you're allowed to give them.
They can remember.
But you can give them a piece of advice, not like, oh my god, bet on the stock market because in 2008 there's going to be a giant financial crash.
This thing called the iPhone.
But like, it's more about like you.
What, am I 12, 13?
Let's say you're 13. You're
On
year
the
9.
night of my bar mitzvah.
It's the night of your bar mitzvah, and you, in the wonderfully flowered jumper you are in now, appear before them to give a bit like that scene in Batman vs Superman where the Flash appears and they never referred to it again. Where it's like, Lois Lane, am I too soon? What are you saying to your 13-year-old self, James?
It's really tough because I'd have to go quite vague because the thing I worry about is like changing too much. I might just be like, back yourself. Which is like that. I can't go in and give specifics because
you don't want to change the life.
I don't want to change a journey. I don't want to just be like, confidence will come.
Yeah.
You're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
Back yourself in your decisions.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. Trust the process.
Yeah.
Don't rush anything.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd probably say the same thing. Yeah, keep it.
Don't worry about school.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say like there's no one I would say like avoid or do that or like don't do that because but it's more just I agree. It's confidence,
don't worry about school.
believe in yourself.
Because like when you're
school
a kid,
is not everything.
Your entire world and
yeah.
life is having been at school.
Yeah.
And your entire perspective is based around, I go to school every day. And then that stops. You technically go to uni, which is kind of like going to a new school in a lot of ways. But you stop that and you're like, oh, the world is just open. It's like you get to past the tutorial phase in an open world game. And now you just have the whole map. It's like Skyrim. And you're like, oh, you can technically just go and do whatever you want within reason.
I think if you have a open relation, not open relation, sorry, what am I trying to say? If you have a good tolerance of change, you're going to be okay. If you can tolerate change,
is that what you're going to say to yourself?
No, it's coming to me now. Maybe I would say this, but I'm thinking in general, and I probably would say that. It's like, and I do have a good tolerance for change. I think it's done me well, but I think it's important for people to know. It's like if you have a good tolerance for change, you'll probably be okay because that is what life is. It's in constant flux, in constant change. And if you're okay with becoming a different person, getting older, people moving away, all that stuff. If you adapt to change quite well, and you are quite adaptable and pragmatic and flexible, you probably do all right.
Guys, comment below what you would say to your 12, 13-year-old self. You've got maybe you've got 90 seconds to speak, and they will remember it. Anyway,
that was my old ass. So, A Real Pain, the new film from Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin, which we reviewed a few months ago. Check that review out if you haven't listened to it already. We had the opportunity to speak to Jesse and Kieran for a very brief time just before Christmas. We're going to include that interview now. It's a short little snippet. We only had 5 minutes with them. James was unavailable, so it was just me and Kieran and Jesse, which, for context, is very difficult to interview two people who love to talk in a 5-minute period about a film which covers mental health, the Holocaust, and so much more. Anyway, here's the interview now. Check it out.
Guys, really great to talk to you both about this film. I've actually been really excited to speak to you both since I've seen it because my grandfather was Polish and he lived through the war. He was 17 when the Nazis invaded.
Oh, wow.
And it was seeing this on screen and the family you guys going back.
Oh, yeah.
Is something I've done with my family. We traced our roots and everything. My granddad was from very, very southeast Poland, near a town called Sanok, which is like right near the Carpathian Mountains.
Oh.
It was really interesting seeing this on screen and I really appreciated that.
Thanks a lot. Amazing.
So kind of jumping off from that point, this film kind of tackles generational guilt in a way. And there's a line that I think David has about there but for the grace of no God, which I think is a brilliant line. And this idea that the life that we have, which is so privileged and exists, so happy to have, is dependent on the fact that sadly your family members suffered. And similarly, Benji has that moment on the train, which is sort of questioning the sort of the implications of that. What made you want to kind of explore that in a film as a writer and a director, and I suppose, and how are you picking up on that as a performer as well?
Oh, it's interesting. I'm really obsessed with like historically dramatic event tourism. I don't know why, but that's the thing that I just like visiting. It's always a little awkward. I've been to like the killing fields in Cambodia, and like you're trying to stay in a nice hotel at night. I've been to Kigali in Rwanda to see the genocide museum, and like, you're like going to this thing, but then at night you're like kind of eating a nice dinner because you're at this hotel, and it's just this very weird, awkward necessity, which is that if you're going to do tourism. For me, I like it because it kind of grounds me in the world and brings out a sense of empathy in me. But the awkward part of it is that you're probably looking to have your kind of creature comforts at the end of the day. And it's just something so weird about that. And so with this movie, I wanted to address that issue kind of head on because it's something I think about all the time, and not just about travel, not just about kind of trauma tourism, but I think about it just in general. How is it possible that I walk through New York City kind of miserable on a day-to-day basis when my family survived through 1,000 miracles, and look what they've wrought, something not that interesting and depressed. You know what I mean?
What I love is the love as well between your two characters as well, despite the way they're so different, and the kind of playful fun that we see in the different way your two characters travel, which I find so interesting. It's sort of more of a lighthearted question now as well, but do you have any personal travel hacks, travel tips, travel quirks that you would want to share to an audience?
I just don't worry about the thing, so I often show up to airports like 10 minutes before the flight takes off, and I make the plane. It always works out. I don't even know what airline I'm flying or sometimes where I'm going, and it's just, I think people plan too much. People like print their tickets or put it on their phone. You don't have to do any of that. You just show up and say your name. And you go, yeah.
Do you agree, Jesse?
No, I don't never know a confirmation number. I literally show up, you put either your passport or your credit card in, and then it gives you your boarding pass.
I think it's because you're being flown around by movie companies.
No. If you buy your own ticket, same
Really?
thing, same exact thing. You go to the airport, you go to a little kiosk, you put your shit in, gives you the ticket, it gives you the thing you print out. You go like this, you hand it off, and if you go to the security, even if you're in coach or whatever, it doesn't matter. You go to them and say, my flight actually stops boarding in 10 minutes. They go to the front.
This is my worst nightmare.
Yeah,
I can't even
give me
believe that this person.
palpitations.
This is why the world is in chaos, because people like him come to the airport 10 minutes early.
That's my advice. It'll all work out. Don't worry about it.
no one
Worst
takes
case
that
scenario, you
advice.
miss the flight and they'll put you on another one. And then you just got to go eat like Baja Fresh or some shit at the airport and have a pint and then get on the next plane. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it.
You're ruining the world.
Well, I'll be at the terminal 4 hours in advance.
Of course.
So maybe see you there, Jesse. But
Yes,
maybe not
I'll definitely.
Guys,
rather
that's
be
all I have
home during that time.
for today, I'm afraid. So
Thanks
great
a
to
lot.
talk to you both.
Thanks, George.
Congratulations on
Thank
the
you.
film.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is a very short amount of time to do an interview, but I think you did great.
Thank you.
You got a
Thank you.
serious question in there and a silly question in there,
Yeah.
and especially like them talking about traveling.
Yeah.
It's just pure chaos and exactly who those two personalities are on screen, but in real life. So
and
really,
you know
really
what?
good fun.
Coming out of the days and weeks since their interview,
Yeah.
we are and putting it in this episode. It is quite nice to be like, that is something we do now. We
Yes,
started
yeah.
this podcast a couple of years ago. Now we're interviewing A-list talent,
And it's
they
nice
go
to
in.
supplement the show with a little bit of
Exactly.
the actual stars on our very podcast, George. 2021, James and George could only dream of having an insert
Oh
of
my
Jesse
God, yeah.
Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin. You mad?
And if you have seen A Real Pain, like Maggie has, email your thoughts into hello@popkitchenpodcast.com, because Maggie has gone to see the film and says, hello, George and James, James and George. I got to see A Real Pain in Poland on my winter holiday, which was an awesome experience, because obviously the film takes place primarily in Poland. I really appreciated watching it with a Polish audience, and in Warsaw nonetheless. I passed by some of the filming locations on my way to the cinema, which is awesome. As a little bonus, I would really recommend you to visit the cinema Kinoteca. I believe you'd appreciate its vintage feel a lot, so add it to your itinerary if you're ever in Warsaw. Thank you, Maggie. On the movie itself, I agree with a lot of the points you said in your review about its subject matter. It was presented objectively and without any real morale. I really appreciated the script for being quite open and mostly sticking to an open-ended discussion format. Obviously, the acting was also really strong, and Kieran was a definite standout performance that people will associate with this movie. There unfortunately is a but. In your review of the film, you mentioned that you appreciated that the image of Poland, a real pain presents, is kind of quaint and beautiful. I did too love the amount of scenery shots which showcase that. I have slightly mixed feelings about the treatment of the country beyond that. As someone who grew up there, I missed the presence of the actual Polish culture, which I'm not sure if it was intentional. One bit of dialogue from Kieran's character makes me think it could be, if you remember his character was expressing a dissatisfaction with the lack of Polish culture and language on the tour they're on. But if my hunch is right, it works as a narrative device, but unfortunately doesn't stop me from slightly grieving the missed opportunity to introduce a wider international audience to my culture, which isn't really recognised outside Eastern Europe. I don't feel like the movie achieves as much of a separation of Poland from Holocaust as I wish for in cinema.
It's complicated because the film is clearly about that thing. I back it. I think it does quite a good job of showing the places that they go to, and they're walking through it and experiencing it.
It's an integral part of the country's history, but my dream is to see a cinema portray the aspects of Poland beyond it. However, to not complain too much, if I was to comment on aspects of the movie that aren't directly tied to its setting, I enjoyed it a lot. I love the dynamic between the cousins and the juxtaposition of their relationship to that and to their heritage. To finish, I really appreciated hearing your thoughts and keep looking forward to new episodes. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on The Brutalist and A Complete Unknown, also reviewing that next week, and wish you both even more success outside of the podcast. Thanks very much, Maggie.
Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I it's that dilemma, isn't it? Because it is about an isolated tour of Americans, predominantly Americans. The lack of engagement with Poland, I don't know if it's a conscious decision or it's just not the film's focus.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a missed opportunity, that? Or?
Not really. I think the film does what it does, and it does it quite deliberately. I don't really think it was lacking in sort of communicating that. I think the things we praised for it was how much it embraced Polish culture and architecture.
Does it, though? Does it? I think I agree with Maggie's point.
In a way that like, we don't typically see that. No, there's no Polish people,
characters.
But like it's the American perspective going through.
Yeah. It is what those tours are, which is a focused itinerary.
And it's a criticism of it.
Yeah. So I take on board your points, Maggie. And
I had an interesting conversation with, I was recommending A Real Pain to a friend. She asked me, I was like, oh yeah, you should go and see it. It's about this and it's about that. And she is like Jewish like me, and she had been, when she was before uni, she did this thing where you go to Israel for a whole year and you do like community work, and it's religiously led, but she's not like crazy religious. And part of their experience was to do a trip to Poland to go to Auschwitz. And she told me when she went to go do that, she didn't really feel that much. And there's this overwhelming pressure when you go and see these things, especially as a Jew, to have this like profound emotional reaction to it. And she was talking about how she finds the space very like matter of fact and unevocative and actually like quite plain. It's interesting, we've seen Zone of Interest and A Real Pain, which really like present those spaces almost just very straight as they are, not trying to give an artistic direction to lean you in one way. And I was like, that's an interesting perspective, and it's kind of why you should see this film, because that is so much criticism of like, well, how should you be reacting to going to this place? Should you have an appropriate reaction? How do you treat yourself the day around that beforehand? How many luxuries do you afford yourself? What is the appropriate way to react? I was like, oh, that's the kind of question the film is asking. You should go and see it.
Very true. Yeah, I agree. It's what's the letting it speak.
And I was
for
like,
itself
I'd love to go to Poland and go and see it because I had family that died there. And she was like, yeah, you can do. She was like, I didn't personally have like a big reaction to it, which is strange.
I mean,
I've how would I react?
I found it very interesting. I agree. I don't know if it wasn't like, it's hard to kind of, because of the scale of it and the matter of factness of it, it's hard to kind of get hit with a direct emotional response necessarily. But everyone is different. Yeah, I would say, as a historical artifact, it's a grim but important thing to see.
I think she was talking about an emotional reaction versus like it being interesting. Because I think you also be told about it for many, many years.
Yeah, I guess.
And then you go. You know, there's like that shot in A Real Pain where they look into a gas chamber itself, and that's like a very loaded shot to have your camera be very still and to not move. It's like you've also, by not moving the camera and creating a sense of dynamism, that's also a decision when you're filming that space. It's so weighted to stick a camera and look inside that room.
It's actually a whole area of discourse about how you shoot things like Holocaust.
And then he cuts the Zone of Interest, which is like them just like pedestrian cleaning of the space. Yeah. Anyway,
that was A Real Pain. On now with some more reviews. So James, BABYGIRL.
BABYGIRL, directed by Helena Rain, who most recently did Bodies from 2022, which liked some bits of it, didn't love it, some of it was just a bit too much, but interesting, fun. This one's very different. It's BABYGIRL, starring Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson, who we love. Who, spoilers, is great in this. Not spoilers for the film, just like for my own review.
Shocker.
He's really good in this. So BABYGIRL is a intense sexual thriller not thriller, intense sexual
Film drama,
erotic drama, sensual erotic drama. The film opens with Nicole Kidman, who is, let me just get the character's name. Hold on a second. Nicole Kidman, who plays Romy, is having sex. Well, by the way, this is a very sexual film. I will do my best for like YouTube advertising things to like keep it as PG as possible. But maybe if you listen with around young kids, you might just want to have this one for yourself. I'll try and keep it as clean as I can.
Yeah. Take yourself off and listen to the Baby
Where you
Girl.
going, love? I'm gonna go listen to James talk about Baby Girl.
I might need 10 minutes.
Just on the walk with the dog. Oh, wow. The film opens with a shot, top down, of Nicole Kidman leaning her head back as she moans in pure orgasmic bliss as she's having sex with her husband. And they climax at exactly the same time. Her husband played by the gorgeous Antonio Banderas. And she, finishes having sex with her husband, but immediately afterwards takes herself quietly away to the other side of a huge New York apartment and opens up her laptop and watches some pornography and essentially finishes herself off. Watching some porn, which from the far side of the room looks like it's something slightly to do with domination and women being like a slightly subservient role. And it's very clear that the orgasm in inverted commas she had with her husband was not real. And that actually what she needs to finish herself off is something a little bit different than her husband has ever given her. And her husband actually has never been able to satisfy her in that way. And she finishes herself off, and there's a lot of sort of like shame.
I already
and
don't
guilt.
believe that Antonio Banderas could never do that. By the way,
It's the least believable thing of it. You know, he totally
He knows his stuff,
receptive. Absolutely. There's a lot of shame and guilt around this. And she is Romy, who is a very high-powered tech CEO. I'm not exactly clear what the company did. It looked to me like something to do with like packaging and automation, like order. And there's lots of shots of like the top-down warehouse of these grids where robots slide along and put boxes in the right thing.
Okay.
And she is like this high-powered CEO, and on the way in, she has a lot of her things very ordered. She's very well made up. She's got a picture-perfect family. She's got 2 lovely daughters, and they take a beautiful Christmas card next to the tree in gorgeous knitwear, and they're sort of the picture-perfect family. And she's on her way to work one day when a street dog starts barking and attacking someone on the street. And a man on the other side immediately is able to calm that dog, and that man is Samuel, played by Harris Dickinson. And she sort of really like observes the way he seems to command respect from this dog, and later forgets about it. But later that day at work, a new rung of interns is joining their intern mentorship program. And who else is part of this group of interns but Samuel, played by Harris Dickinson? Samuel is a character that immediately seems to have is able to observe what characters seem to want. And it's almost like a mythic idea that he, for some reason, can tell what you want. And they have this sort of one-on-one mentorship program, and they get linked together and have a first awkward meeting. And she asks him, how did you know how to stop that dog? And he's like, I gave it a treat, and that seemed to calm it down. It's like, how did you know it would want a treat? And he says something like, I didn't. Why? Do you want a treat? And you can tell that certain parts of him is figuring out that what she actually wants in an already inverted power dynamic is to sort of be told what to do. And so we have this complex relationship that is developed between Samuel and Romy. Obviously, it's an affair from her husband, Jacob, played by Antonio Banderas. And we have this film which plays out like an exploration of desire and sex itself. And there are many, many scenes which break down the very minutiae of desire and how power plays work and consent around being dominated and being told what to do and how that changes desire. And I think the film is sticking out for a couple of reasons. One, because there's a couple of things in play here, in that typically Hollywood either doesn't portray women over 50, let's say, sexually at all, or if it does, it's done in a comedic sense, like, oh, she's a cougar, and it's not a sort of realistic depiction of any women over 50 with a sexual desire. And so that's problematic, in that we don't really have many films about sex itself. We see sex so much in films, but they're actually, once you really start to think about it, we don't break down in its nitty-gritty desire and intimacy and the the places that sexual desire can take you in a way that's irresponsible, dangerous, has ramifications for your personal life. And that's what's really interesting about this film, is that it is first and foremost about sex. And I really like how it tackles those things head on. What this film does well is, I think, I could very easily, like, just from that dialogue I spoke to you now, I don't think the dialogue is bad, but in the wrong hands, I think this dialogue could really fall apart. And what this film does well is it does all the most important things right for me. It's got brilliant performances, particularly from Harris Dickinson, but Nicole Kidman gives a performance which is like experienced and effortless. I never saw her acting, in like it's like this intangible quality of like great chemistry between actors when they, in lesser hands, some of the scenes and the intimacy and the dialogue and the sexual things, which is quite easy to giggle at, wouldn't have worked. And similarly, her chemistry with Antonio Banderas works really well. For a lot of the film, I'm watching it thinking, God, this is just absolute filth, and like the best way. Like, it's really enticing and very sexy. And I was wondering, are you going to be able to bring this home to make a grander point? And in the last 20 minutes in particular, I thought you've made a really interesting point there about sex and desire. And I'm glad to see that that's come home and isn't just 50 Shades of Grey. Yeah. So I was really glad to see that. The score's really brilliant. There's great use of sound design. The cinematography is interesting. There are so many times when the camera is clearly very close to the actor's face, and it uses a really wide open aperture, so like everything kind of falls off to the wayside, like it would when you are being aroused, or when somebody is like the sole focus of yours. If you're really aroused sexually, like all the other details just seem to fall away. And I was really impressed with it. I wouldn't be surprised if some people walked away and said, well, this is really silly. And while I can understand why you'd say that, I think the film wants to be taken seriously. Yeah. It does have something interesting to say about desire and sex, specifically for, in this case, a character who's over, I don't know exactly the age, but who's someone we don't typically get to see sexualized in film. And I'm really glad it made those points. And I'm quite happy to go, no, I think this film is earning its right to indulge in those sexy scenes, and the scenes in particular are just very interesting, like how they touch, who does the first thing. They're also figuring out in some of these scenes, like, well, how do you want to do this, and what do we do to do it? And it was in that last act where I thought, yes, that's interesting. You've earned the right to tell this story. And I hope people do take it seriously and do enjoy it. But also there's quite a lot to enjoy. You just want to go and enjoy it. So yeah, it's a thumbs up. I really enjoyed it. I went to go see it with Talia.
What did you think?
Yeah, we both really enjoyed it. And it's interesting. It's beautifully shot. It's got a great score. Really good small cast. Great performances. Just the important stuff done right.
Yes.
So everything else sort of just snapped into place. So I think it's really good.
Fantastic.
Go and see it.
So that is Baby Girl. If you've seen it, let us know your thoughts to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. We'd love to hear what you think of it, whether you agree with James, disagree with James. I hope to be catching that later this week as well. Yep. And if I've seen it by the time next week, I will give my thoughts as well. Excellent.
It's definitely a case of like they had great chemistry, but if they didn't, the whole film, I mean, you could almost.
There's almost a lesson for most films, isn't it? Really,
of course, a lesson for most films.
Like, absolutely, it's they've got to. It's got to be 100% committal.
Yes,
commitment.
And even as a 3 with Antonio Banderas as them, I'm like, yes, this scene which could have been really naff has worked, and I'm like, it could have gone wrong. Like, so when I was reading the dialogue out to you, you were almost laughing a little bit because it doesn't quite seem real.
I know, but if it's done with you got to execute it in the right way.
Yeah.
Out of context, you've got to create the context. But in the same way, that's like like anything, any dirty talk or anything like that out of context,
totally.
it would just sounds completely ridiculous. But then obviously in the context they create. Yeah.
Harris Dickinson is really, you can tell he's loving the detail of every touch, movement, quirk, eye movement. He gets really enjoy every intentional piece of movement, and he does very well with it.
So we've been saying recently that we would have thought Harris Dickinson would make a good Bond to be the next Bond.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like now, because this film's getting a lot of coverage and it's very prestigious, I think that he's just past the point in a way that he doesn't need to be Bond anymore. He's kind of getting all the interesting roles. At some point, he'll need to do a studio movie.
Yes.
But I don't know whether he wants to be bound to the 15-year
He's
commitment.
probably doing quite well staying in A24 land or equivalent.
But that's what I mean. He's like Triangle of Sadness, Baby Girl, and
that's why it's quite interesting to see what Mikey Madison does next.
Yes.
If Mikey Madison gets to stay in A24 land, literally in the case of Honora, she gets to be that go-to girl. Versus if she goes studio, will she lose a sort of strand of her quality?
But I think it's actually impossible to be a top list actor and not do a studio property. when we did this on Double Take recently, we went through the actors and who was in the top band
Great
and not.
episode of Double Take.
The top band, if we say so ourselves.
Yeah.
In the top band of the 6 actors we mentioned, all of them had done studio properties.
Yeah.
The only one I can think of who's a major actor, and this was in the second band, is Saoirse Ronan. But that's the last studio movie that Saoirse Ronan did, I would say, is Little Women. That was actually it's still made by a studio, but it's not
not considered in the same way. It's not Marvel, is it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like Paul Mescal did Gladiator 2. Timothy Chalamet does Dune and Wonka. Florence Pugh does Marvel. They all dip. And you need to do that to be able to, first of all, financially back yourself.
Yeah.
But also establish yourself as someone who can straddle both the. Because it's great doing A24 projects. But you can't do them forever, and there's no financially. You need to spread your stability out. So I think I'm wondering what Harris Dickinson's next big movie will be. You know,
kind of like Clooney was always doing Coen Brothers stuff, but then went and did Oceans and sort of,
you know, like So interesting to watch. What
Yes.
else? But do you agree? I'm thinking like he's kind of past that point now. Bond.
I never thought that he'd be likely to play Bond. It's more like he would be an interesting pick for me. I think he'd physically have to change himself, and he'd have to like bond himself up a bit. But yeah, I don't really know. Apparently James Norton is hotly
I've been
tipped
hearing
now.
that for like 10 years. Honestly,
Yeah.
about 10 years. So if it is James Norton, who's a perfectly fine actor, I will be a bit like, okay.
Sure.
A bit feels like reheated news.
Yes.
A little bit. But anyway, we're
He's
not here to talk
someone
about
I've
Bond.
never seen before.
That's it.
Just give me some
That's what I
random
meant
guy.
about Baby Girl, is that Harris Dickinson has established himself enough now.
Yeah.
He's an established name. He's been in enough things now. You
Like
kind
Daniel
of want
Craig
a
had
less-
just done Layer Cake with Matthew Vaughn, and it was like he'd kind of.
Well, he did, actually. Well, he'd done a couple of things.
I know he'd done more
but-
things.
oh,
in
you
terms
just
of like
before.
the mainstream
Oh,
just
yeah, that
before.
was the
I'm like,
mainstream, yeah.
that's what he'd done that was in the mind's eye. And Layer Cake wasn't this massive commercial success. It was like a great DVD if you purchased it. So it was like he probably had less of an imprint on our eyes that Harris Dickinson has had now. And like most of the other names that people mention, I'm like, these are very established.
Yeah, like Aaron Taylor-Johnson is like, he's already established. And also the thing is now, if they do say Aaron Taylor-Johnson is Bond, I'm kind of like, okay, you kind of killed the news because you sort of said that 6 months ago.
Have you seen the news about the Bond stuff being in turmoil and the whole fights between the Broccolis and Amazon?
That's right, because Amazon owns MGM, and obviously MGM owns Bond.
Yeah.
So they're fighting. Yeah, there's rumors that the Broccolis are putting their the foot
They
down.
want to do like a Moneypenny spin-off series, which sounds like a terrible idea.
That sounds like the worst
Worst
the
idea.
Marvelization of
And,
IP.
Barbara Broccoli like said that they're all morons or something. Don't quote me on that. And then they famously, you know, when No Time to Die was ready, but COVID had happened. And everyone it was that Christmas that got cancelled in the UK. And there was this big movement to like put Bond out on a streamer for Christmas, put Bond out on a streamer. And they were like, no, we're going to do a theatrical release.
Yeah,
and there was this reticence and this sort of anti-streamer sentiment, which I'm really glad they didn't.
Yeah.
They did. When did No Time to Die eventually come out? Was it April, May?
No, it was like September, October. It was just after we started. It was our second episode.
Yes,
it was
yeah,
like
yeah,
October
you're
21.
right. So they really
That's
held
18
onto it.
months after it was meant to come out. April 2020 was meant to come out.
So yeah. Anyway, just a bit of Bond stuff.
There you go. Let's get on with.
Please write in with your thoughts if you've seen Baby Girl and let us know. Hello at popkitchenpodcast.com. We'll read them out on the show.
Let's get on with some emails.
George, should we go through some of the emails that we get sent into the show every single week? As always, guys, if you want to send in your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, your reviews, you can do by emailing them in to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com, or you can support us on the VIP tier on Patreon, just like VIP Owen did. He
Yes,
just jumped straight to
hello.
the top of the queue. Owen writes in and says, hi, guys.
Well, friend of the show, Owen. Oh,
Friend of the
not just
show.
a VIP, because Owen has written in most weeks now.
With a running theme.
Running theme.
Which I'm enjoying.
Yes.
Owen, thank you. Owen writes in and says, hi guys. It is time for your film list dilemma. Let's hope I do better this time after my Scarlett Johansson list bombed at the Pulp Kitchen review.
Sorry, we wiped it completely
Wiped
clean,
it,
didn't
yeah.
we? We just repopulated it.
My aim this week is to have 2 films survive. Before we start, I will mention each week what films I have seen in the last week. He goes on to say, ISS, pretty good and intense.
I mentioned that was one of the films that absolutely bombed last
yeah.
year that didn't get heard about, but 7 out of 10 from Owen.
Nice little scores there. Transformers 1, which neither of us have seen. One of my films of the year. Brilliant. 10 out of 10.
Wow.
We've also heard great things about Transformers 1. And The Beekeeper, oh dear God, what was that? 2 out of 10. He's got a new film, Statham, which is from
what's
the
he doing
director
now?
of The Beekeeper. It is, is he like the workman? He's like the...
Oh, don't.
He's like a construction guy, former Marine.
Do you think he's got like a children's book of careers? He just flicks through and goes, okay, I want to play this, but he's secretly a Marine.
Yeah.
Okay, and now he's going to be a
army farmer.
priest, but he's secretly a Marine. And now he's a civil servant, but he's secretly a Marine. By the way, Transformers, I've never seen a Transformers movie.
Not a single one.
And I think that's okay, right?
I thought Transformers 1 was entertaining.
But at the time, right?
Yeah.
If I was to have watched one, I probably
No,
should have done
I
it.
think you could watch Transformers 1 now, and you would have a fairly entertaining time.
Okay.
It's the rest that I think would be egregious to watch.
So,
Right here is your next list. Ryan Gosling, as always, rearrange, take out, and add in as required.
Ryan
Good
Gosling's
luck,
top 5.
and catch up next week. So he's listed Ryan Gosling's, his what he thinks are Ryan Gosling's top 5 movies. George and I are allowed to reorder, remove, take away, subtract, add as we see fit. Right. He has listed number 5, Barbie.
Fair.
Number 4, Blade Runner 2049.
Sure.
Number 3, Drive. Number 2, Only God Forgives. And number 1, The Grey Man.
The Grey Man.
Which neither of us have seen. I don't remember it being that
Good.
well received.
Yeah.
Because you've listed some great Gosling films
Yeah.
on there. Oh my God, George, I totally forgot to tell you. The other night, I was with my mum and my sisters. We were like, should we put something on? And we put on, what's it called? Oh my God, the stunt one.
The Fall Guy.
The Fall Guy.
Oh, yeah.
I remember you said, I had vaguely in the back of my mind you being like, it's just not that good. We watched it for 30 minutes.
I didn't say it was bad. No, I didn't think it was. I said it's a pretty good plane movie.
Oh,
It's
so we were
very
watching it, we were
watchable.
like, this isn't funny. This really isn't funny.
Yeah,
It's
I agree with that.
I felt like the film kept trying to make jokes, but none of them landed. It was toned like a
Did you not
comedy.
finish it?
No, we stopped. We were like, this is really not working for us. It's rubbish.
Yeah,
I
I
really didn't like it.
I do actually agree with that. I don't have any bad feelings towards The Fall Guy. I think they're giving it a good go. I think the director's giving it a good go. I think Gosling's giving it a good go. I think Blunt's giving it a good go. But I do know what you mean. It's like
every scene was building towards a joke, and then they went, no, never mind.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, is this meant to be funny? They're sort of quipping. I was like, this isn't entertaining. It's not interesting. It's not funny.
It gets really silly and it gets really long. It's quite long. And the climax, the action scene is actually pretty silly. Also,
Probably gave up on it.
I think you are kind of right. I mean, because Anna watched it on the way
My
out.
memory, I thought you had thought of it more negatively. I don't know why.
I
saw it and thought it was. I gave up on it, so I thought it was bad.
Fair. No, I sorry, just to bring that to a close. I thought it was okay, watchable enough, overlong, a bit silly, but having thought about it longer and having sat next to Anna who watched it then on a plane.
Right.
And she was like, that was really silly. She was like, it was okay, but really silly. I think I'm less offended by it than you.
Yeah. Again, I didn't finish it, so like pinch yourself.
Okay.
But anyway, just
So
separately to
looking at
Ryan
this
Gosling.
list,
So Barbie, Blade Runner 2049,
Okay.
Drive, Only God Forgives,
So-
and The Grey Man. I think we could both agree The Grey Man is not in our
The
top
Grey Man.
5.
Well, I've not
Gosling.
seen it, so there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, no prejudice, but I've not seen it. And Only God Forgives, I've not seen either.
Neither.
So I'm removing. Now, I think Drive is actually kind of on the fence for me because I love Drive and he is good in it. But because it's such a small, minute, dour performance, I'm not sure it shows the best of his chops. I think, what we've said before, Gosling is also a great comic actor.
Yes.
And Barbie is great. And if you didn't put Barbie in there, you could put Crazy Stupid Love.
I think Barbie deserves to
I
be
think
in
Barbie
there.
deserves to be in there.
He kind of steals the show in that film.
I think
He's
I'd
really
probably
good.
put Barbie at number 2.
So I think a film that needs to go in there is First Man, and I think you'd agree with me.
yeah, that is his
one
best
of the
performance.
great Ryan Gosling performance of a film that's criminally maybe underseen and under discussed, and it's that's going straight to the top for me.
Blue Valentine.
Yeah, I really need to see Blue Valentine.
Valentine,
I think
very sad,
I think
very
he's
good.
brilliant in Blade Runner 2049. He does a lot of that's. If we're talking about his performance or the film itself, I really rate Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
I rewatched it, I think 2-3 years ago, and I was reminded about how much of an accomplishment it is. La La Land, we need to discuss.
The Nice Guys. I think his comedic chops.
The Place Beyond the Pines.
So this is the thing.
Ryan Gosling's got a good
He's
list
got a
of
good
films.
range. I'd actually say The Nice Guys above Blade Runner 2049, above Drive.
The Notebook is one of his most famous and iconic roles, but I have a feeling rewatching The Notebook might not hold up to those other films which I actually rate quite highly. So I think it might be a shame to omit The Notebook, but I'm actually okay to not do it. I'll live with it.
And with La La Land, I think he's good in it, but I still see that more as Emma Stone's film. I think she stands out more.
Yeah,
I don't
see what you mean.
like his performance is good, but when you say to me the performances in La La Land, I go, oh yeah, Emma Stone really nails it. Personally, I just don't think his character
And
gives
with
him that
Blade
much
Runner,
range.
his character, like Kane, is very reactionary and plain, but he is given stuff to do, and what he does do with it is very well done. It's more of a he is like the sort of vessel with which the plot moves through, and a lot of stuff is happening around him. But even still, he is good in it.
But that's what I mean about Drive. Like Drive is very good. He's very good in it, but I'm not sure. Okay, for me, I've got mine.
The Drive and Blade Runner roles are actually fairly similar, aren't they?
I'm going to do.
Let's go. First Man number one. Oh, what about The Big Short?
Well,
Talk about The Big Short because he's very good in that.
He's got good
film. Place Beyond the Pines are we going to have in? Because that's also like a third his film. If you've seen,
I think because you and I have slightly seen different Gosling films. So I think mine is number 5. I'm going to say Blue Valentine.
Yeah.
Number 4, I'm going to say The Nice Guys. Number 3, I'm going to say Place Beyond the Pines.
Yeah.
Number 2, I'm going to say Barbie. And number 1, I'm going to say First Man.
So we're not including La La Land.
I'm not including
La La Land, Blade Runner. So I'd probably have. See, La La Land I don't love.
Yeah.
I'll put Blade Runner in mine somewhere, and then. Yeah,
I could easily
Big
sub
Short.
out.
Only because I haven't seen Blue Valentine, but I believe you when you say it.
Well, the thing is, though, I could if we were going to match our list, I would take out Blue Valentine, put in Blade Runner, and I'd take out Nice Guys and put in Big Short because then it's still holding a place for comedic.
Yes.
Ryan. And Crazy Stupid Love, I think he's very good.
Please
at
go
as
and
well.
watch First Man if you haven't. It's really interesting, and when they do the moon stuff, it looked really cool. So go and check that out. Damon Chazelle's least musical.
By the way, have we talked about the fact I went to Cape Canaveral? Did we talk about that on the show, that I went to Kennedy Space Center?
I don't know if you did it on the show.
But I did, which was interesting.
Yeah.
America does great museums.
Yes.
But the thing is about Kennedy Space Center, it's like just a little bit outdated, and it's a little bit like slightly dumbed down, which I find really strange. It's lacking the detail. I'm like, I want to know about the spaceships. I want to know this, that.
Yeah.
But it's just like, they went to the moon, and this was what zero gravity was like.
So Dino, because they faked the moon landing.
And there's this really, honestly, this whole sort of like auditorium you go into where they've got like the shuttle in the middle. It's probably from the 90s, judging by the VT they play. It's like at least the 90s. And like it's done with this very sincere, but I think sounds a little bit like completely overdramatic monologue, which is like, and then they did this, and then they went to the moon. And there's a bit where they're trying to describe how Neil Armstrong like almost like pitched the rover over the wrong way and it like almost crashed. And they had this error message flashing up at Houston saying like error 102. And it's got the commentary's like, and at Houston they scrabbled to realize what an error 102 really was. And I found that really funny. And I'm like bursting out laughing. And then this auditorium of very sincere Americans and very serious sort of look at me like, this is what happened.
It was a serious error 102.
Error 102. Anyway, this next email is from Sean, who writes in and says, hello, George and James and George. Friend of the show. Sure. Okay, it could be Sean. But I think you have written in before, and I've actually forgotten how you pronounce your name.
Apologies if we got the Sean wrong.
It's Sean or Sean here writing to you in response to your Maria review, which we reviewed last week. I semi-agree with by the way, Maria now available on Netflix, I believe,
yes.
Or at least coming soon with Angelina Jolie. We reviewed it last week. I semi-agree with everything you said, although I find myself more on the negative side of the film's divisiveness. It was especially when you mentioned how Maria is what Maestro wishes it was. I have to say, I strongly disagree with this statement. Okay. While, like you, I adore the cinematography and direct styling of Pablo Larraín, I thought Bradley Cooper's style had a similar effect of the story, if not more so. The camera work and movements were so much more bold and adventurous in Maestro, whereas Maria, it was quite still and unexciting. In terms of performances, I agree that Angelina Jolie gives an incredibly worthy portrayal of the prima donna. However, in comparison to the performances of Bradley Cooper and Carey Mulligan, it was quite monotonous. This is even more prevalent to me since you have both Cooper and Mulligan to marvel at. In terms of the story, I truly believe that the more tragic characters are depicted in Maestro. We see the adventures of Lenny and Felicia from the start of their lives together to the very end, how much they loved each other, and which makes their parting so much more despondent. With Maria, we see a bitter, regretful week of the end of a very glamorous life. For me, the most tragic part of Maria Callas's life is her encounters with the Nazis growing up, which is sort of referred to in the film. But the film, I think, didn't draw a lot to that. As I find myself getting slightly worked up, I'll stop the rant there. Keep up the great work anyway, boys. I can't wait to hear your review on The Brutalist coming up, since I told you my thoughts on it way back in September from the Venice Film Festival. Apologies again for not getting you tickets. Hey,
right.
Sean, you'll get us there next time. We should have our interview with The Brutalist coming out next week, along with an interview with the director, Brady Corbett. So check out
that tomorrow.
Yes, we're recording it.
We'll have a clip in the app and on social media, which is very exciting.
Stay well. Sirens on our end. Sean.
I wouldn't be surprised if Maria divides audiences.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what mood are you in when you watch it? How many films like that have you just seen that are better or worse than it?
It's a hard film to recommend, really. You really have to kind of know what it's kind of setting it. Like you need to know
It's like on an extreme political wing of cinema, and you're either. Do you know what I mean?
You have to be game for that kind of vibe. You can't just be like, oh, whack Maria on. No, it's a stiff, specific view.
Gorgeous to look at, though.
Gorgeous.
This next one is from Megan, who writes in, "Good evening, gents. I'm slightly late to the party, but Happy New Year. Long-time listener and Patreon member. What a way to start the year. I'm sure you'll be hearing from me in the future with some more interesting questions and hot takes, but for now, I just want to say thank you. On a personal level, I've had a love for cinema from a young age with a soft spot for any fantasy action adventure thrown my way. Growing up, I would get so much joy out of film, but then have nobody to share my excitement with, often being shut down by family members who are content with saying, that was good, and moving on. As someone who likes to discuss and share my experiences, I'm sure they found my rambling slightly/incredibly annoying. Discovering your podcast has been a blessing for this. Knowing there are people around the world that appreciate films in a similar way to me, the community you've created is a wonderful thing. I know I'm not the first to say this, and surely won't be the last, but you've truly reinvigorated my love of cinema. You both deserve all the success coming your way. Keep up the fantastic work, and hope you keep enjoying it as much as the sirens do. Big love, Meg." Meg, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is so kind. And thank you so much for your support on Patreon. It really does mean the world to us.
Thank you, Meg.
And with that, those were the emails that we had for this week. Thank you, as always, for sending them in to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. Don't forget, guys, if you want to support us on Patreon, you can listen to this show ad-free. You can also get access to our exclusive news show, Double Take, and you can be a VIP where you can get priority access to read out your email just like Owen did, and you can be a producer of the show. So go and check out that space. That's the best way to support us. It would mean the world. But in the meantime, let's finish with a game. George, as always, Pulp Kitchen ends
With a game.
With a game. Today, I have classic cast list countdown for you, George. I've got 4 films. I'm going to read out 4 films.
Oh, lucky.
I'm going to read out the cast of a film in some sort of reverse order, and George has to tell me before I get to the end of the list what film the cast belongs to. George, are you ready? Please play along at home. I
am ready.
You'll get
All of them.
all of them. Yeah, maybe one might trip you up. We'll see. Or like you'll get to the end of one.
Play along at home.
Are you ready?
Can I just wait before we do
Yeah,
this?
sure.
Are these all films, or are any of them animated in their vocal casts?
They are all films.
Good, because I think that's important to know.
Caught you out before.
Yeah,
George, are you ready?
cheated.
You have to guess the film from its cast. Stephen Graham. John C. Reilly. Henry Thomas.
Who's Henry Thomas?
Brendan Gleeson. You'd recognise him. Jim Broadbent. Liam Neeson's.
There's 2 of them.
Cameron Diaz.
I have it.
Yes.
This is Gangs of New York.
Yeah. So I threw you off with Stephen Graham and John C. Reilly. The rest of the cast members
Yeah.
are Leonardo DiCaprio and, of course, Daniel Day-Lewis.
I need to rewatch that. I've only really
same.
seen it once. I think it's got great hype, obviously.
Great costumes in that film.
Yeah.
And set design.
And I think
It's all
Stephen
top
Graham...
hats and sort of like wide lapel
Yeah.
blazers, coats.
Stephen Graham, I forget he's been in stuff for so long. As a little character addition.
A little mate of Scorsese's.
Yeah.
Henry Thomas you'd recognise, by the way.
Is Henry Thomas the kid who played Elliot in E.T.?
Yeah.
thought
and
rang a
that
bell.
him, yeah. George, you have to guess the film from the cast. Lorna Scott. Chris Pratt. Terence Stamp. Common. Kristen Hager. Thomas Kretschmann. Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, I got it.
Angelina Jolie.
I'll let you finish it, but I got it, yeah.
And last one, James McAvoy.
Because it's Wanted. Curve the bullet.
I just found it funny that Chris Pratt's in this film before he was Chris Pratt.
He gets smashed in the face with the keyboard.
Yes.
I have seen Wanted. Do you know what? It's one of those weird things where I watched Wanted on a Monday and watched it again on a Wednesday. Not because I overly loved it, but because I had someone had lent me the DVD, and then my brother was like, "I haven't seen that. Can I watch it?" So I watched it again. And I remember on second viewing, didn't really give me much.
I have it on DVD somewhere.
There's a whole section of that film where there's a huge train crash in a ravine.
Yes.
And hundreds of people are killed, and it's just never really talked about again.
Yeah.
It just sort of just happens. Curve the bullet.
I think they really wanted that film to be
No pun intended.
wanted to be a film for like Matrix for like the next decade. It definitely borrows a lot, and like you can bend things if you want to, and things you never thought possible were here, like visually and spiritually copy the Matrix there in that way.
Also, it was really like brownie, honey,
Yeah.
like sepia tone. Do you remember?
Warm.
Got a like washed out. It's got that
Mahogany Library.
and kind of oversaturated, over-contrasted 2008 look. It's
Yeah.
kind of slightly
It's a weird one for
garbagey.
James McAvoy to be in there. It's like a lead action man. Like, he does great.
Post just after
08?
Atonement. Yeah, it's just after Atonement.
Yeah, it's kind of
Pre-X-Men.
rogue to put McAvoy in there.
And on the poster, he's not the main focus. It's
Angelina's
Angelina.
arms and a
he's doing
gun.
that.
Yeah. He's mid curl. All right, you're 2 for 2. George, you have to guess the film from the cast.
No one could defeat me.
Vincent Schiavelli, Jerry Lawler, Courtney Love,
Yeah, I know it is already. I know it is.
Paul Giamatti,
Yeah, I got it.
Danny DeVito.
Yeah, I know it is.
Say it with me.
Jim
Carrey.
Carrey. This is Man on the Moon.
Yeah.
This is the Milos Forman movie about Andy Kaufman, which, of course, Jim and Andy, the documentary, looked back
Great
into.
documentary. It's more kind of like a Jim Carrey documentary, really.
Yeah,
but-
I know that because you said Jerry Lawler, and that's the only way I know that name because he's a wrestler. So you said Jerry Lawler, I was like, that's a wrestler, and I then immediately saw the footage in my head of him beating up Andy Kaufman on Letterman.
Yeah, I like
So-
that. 'Cause you got like Courtney Love in there.
She's good in
then
it,
straight-
actually. I
I've
remember
not seen
that.
it.
She's quite good in it. Yeah.
And then Paul Giamatti, Danny DeVito, Jim Carrey. What all like a ragtag group of actors to
Yeah.
come together for something. But
It's
great.
not a bad movie. Interesting.
Yeah.
And another good, solid Jim Carrey in a serious role.
Yeah. Moving on to your last film. George, you have to guess the film from the cast. Jason Fleming, Liam Cunningham, Kaya Scodelario, Luke Evans, Nicholas Hoult, Mads Mikkelsen, Alexa Davos, Ray Fiennes,
Okay.
Liam Neeson, last one, Sam Worthington. Yeah, big cast.
That's the thing that gives it away.
yeah.
That's the one that
So
got it.
go to his era.
So I was thinking to myself, I thought it was this random Roman film called like The Eagle of the Ninth with Jamie Bell and Channing Tatum.
Yeah,
And there was
solid
another
film.
one called like The Last Centurion, something like that. But then when you said Sam Worthington, I was like, Clash of the Titans.
Clash, yeah.
Clash of the Titans.
Incredible cast in there.
Really good.
Rubbish film.
Yeah, I've heard.
In that sort of like big budget 3D event. So it was a disaster movie mixed with, I guess the Iliad.
Do you remember
but
what the tagline for that movie was?
No.
Titans will clash. That was the tagline. Thanks, thanks tagline. And then they made the sequel. Do you remember?
Godzilla, God will Zilla.
Oppenheimer. He hymened that up.
Yeah.
Did you know that they made a sequel then 2 years later? Wrath of the Titans,
Which I didn't
with
see.
Rosamund Pike.
I'm sure.
But
I remember catching that on Sky Movies and being like, this. I'd heard it was bad. And watching the first like 20, 30 minutes being like, this is badly. These are great actors acting very badly.
I feel
And
like
the CG's rubbish.
I feel like that was before some sort of blockbuster reckoning, where like,
Yeah.
the reckoning happened and said you can't make films like this anymore for such
No.
bloated budgets and be this silly.
Yeah, but big cast in there, having fun.
Huge. I was like, so you're telling me on IMDb if you look up films that Ray Fiennes and Liam Neeson have been in together, it's Schindler's List and Clash of the Titans.
Unfortunately, those are their hangovers. It reminds me of like obviously Nolan's doing the Homer's Odyssey. And I'm like, that in a lot of ways he's done the big Oppenheimer.
By the way,
film.
which has a budget reportedly of $250 million.
that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's the
That'll
highest.
be the
he's
highest
playing
he's
with
ever
these.
done.
Yeah.
Because
He's
this
earned it.
This is what I'm saying. Like you did such an ambitious film with Oppenheimer, and in the way you told that story, I thought was ambitious and bold. He's gone. I think Homer's Odyssey is a big risk.
Yeah.
Trying to do that story is tough.
But that's exactly the kind of film he should be making. He shouldn't be playing it safe. He is stuck to his guns and he's established himself as a director that has critical acclaim, but
Totally.
awards backing, and more importantly, box office success. He should be picking a
of all the
project
filmmakers,
that is a risk.
I back him to do it.
Yeah.
It's more that I'm surprised that someone like Nolan, who loves the big, but I'm surprised he didn't want to go, should I tell a smaller story next?
He doesn't do that.
And then do
doesn't
Homer's
do
Odyssey.
small.
Smaller like the Prestige.
he is at the peak of his career.
Totally.
He is at the peak of his career right now.
Yeah.
So hearing that he's going to do something big like the Odyssey, I'm like, I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if it'll pay off, but
That's
I'm
the
glad
thing.
from a creative, artistic point of view, that's the healthiest thing you can do.
It's the biggest story to try and tell.
You've got to push yourself. You've got to always work at the very edge of.
What's a bigger story than the Odyssey?
It.
Like, do you know what I mean? The Iliad.
He is in the system core of narrative. I think we said this before. He's entered the system core.
Yeah.
This is the final boss of narrative. Is Homer's Odyssey. He's completed the game level of all storytelling, and he gets to the final
It'd be
boss.
fun if he does. If he does like all the gods. Like, he goes on to do Norse gods and. Because they're fun.
I
like
guess
God of War.
space again is bigger.
Space.
Or the ocean. But then that's kind of James Cameron's territory. You know? James Cameron has that on
He's
lock.
got the ocean, and he's got doing the ocean in sci-fi as well.
Anyway,
I could do with
I'm always very interested in on the creative decisions people make in their career.
Always.
David Bowie has a lot of interesting quotes you can go check out online about how to operate as an artist on the very limits of what you do, and that's what I was thinking about with Nolan. But why did you bring that up? Were you going back to
the Clash of the Titans mythology reminded me of the Odyssey, and then I was like,
I do
fine.
wonder how it's going to be.
And big cast.
Do you know
Lots of money.
if he wasn't doing the Odyssey, the only other director I think I'd want to see do the Odyssey would be Robert Eggers. Because a bit like The Northman, which had such an
what
interesting
you mean.
grasp on like mythology and iconography and visual storytelling and myth building. I'm kind of
It'd
like
be cool, but I also think I love Nosferatu. I'd like Robert Eggers to sit back down in his weirder place a little bit.
you want him to lean into his inner Ari Aster,
Yes,
you know?
totally. God, they'd be interesting guests at a dinner party.
Robert Eggers is also like really stylish and quite
Yeah, he's a
handsome
cool
when you
guy.
see him. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this is cool. Most directors look like they've just fallen out of a tree. And they just
Nolan
pulled
wears
up.
the same outfit every single time you see him.
Fair play. I like that. Do you know actually who's the most smartly dressed director? Is Paul Feig, who directed
Yes.
Bridesmaids. He always wears like a double-breasted. He looks like
filmed him.
he looks like King Charles.
He's got like I filmed him at an event once. He had like a gorgeous red velvet blazer, big black frame glasses, cool bow tie, very like jazzy hands.
And that's how he directs his movies. And I'm like, respect.
It's
You
funny.
always
It
wear
brings
that.
a levity to set.
It's like Sam Raimi always wears a suit as well. I kind of think it's just a nice little bit of respect.
Because a lot of directors, they sort of have, if they're outside, they've got the hoodie, the headphones, the
coat,
gilet. It's very functional wear. You know, it's like it's a studio day on set, location. Love
Anyway.
it. That was all we have time for today in Pulp Kitchen. Thank you so much for joining us. We really hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, we post new episodes of this show every single Wednesday.
Stay tuned for our episode next week where we'll be interviewing Brady Corbett, the director of The Brutalist. We'll be reviewing The Brutalist, and we'll also be reviewing Bob Dylan biopic with Timothée Chalamet, A Complete Unknown.
He's
as
in
well as
another
more
one.
films as well, probably. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see what else we can pick up in that time.
We'll do what we want.
Please also thank you for your support as ever across all of our various platforms, Patreon, etc., and also for supporting us on social media. Guys, we like posting clips on there about events we go to and film bites. That's how many of you discovered our show. I hope that's where many of you continue to support our show. It's great fun doing this. I like our new setup.
Yeah, I like it. It looked nice. I like the way it turned out last week.
And also stay tuned on the feed for later this week when I'll be giving my thoughts on Wicked, which I finally saw. Have a great week, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.